Country music hits, you know it's time for another episode of Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, CJ Tully. Lots to get to today. Going to be starting off different here today with the Philadelphia Phillies. They've made some moves. We're going to jump back on that. Haven't really talked about them much since the summertime. We also have the college football bracket has officially been released for the playoffs. Lots of conversation going on around that. I have my hot takes on it. I have things I'd like and dislike about all of this, so we'll talk about all of that. And then, of course, we'll talk some NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles picking up yet again another ugly loss. 4 turnovers on the game for Jalen Hurts. Did not look great at all, but we'll get into all of that. As I mentioned before, we're going to start here with the Philadelphia Phillies and everything that's happened with them, because I do feel like we're running back the same exact thing. If you guys haven't heard, Kyle Schwarber has signed a 5-year deal with the Phillies worth $150 million. Now, when you look at things money-wise, I'm not too concerned about that. I know Dave Dombrowski's going to spend money. So the $150 million, that's whatever. My biggest gripe with this signing was going to be the fact that Kyle Schwarber is going to be here for another 5 years. I believe he's 33 years old now. He's going to be 33 by the season start. So you're going to have him here well into his almost 40s here. So do you want to continue with this veteran core? As soon as the season ended, my biggest thing was, okay, this core hasn't worked. We have some free agents. We can let those contracts go. We don't have to work with the exact same core for years to come. Now they re-signed Kyle Schwarber to a 5-year deal. The max I would have gone on Kyle Schwarber was maybe 3 years. I don't think you needed to tax on anything at the end. You still have JT Realmuto, who's a free agent. He's also up there in age. You see what Bryce Harper's decline has been of late. You look at what's happening here with Trey Turner as well. And I felt like this DH spot opening up with Schwarber, in my opinion, would have been leaving. Then you would have had Bryce Harper and Trey Turner as the possible DHs going forward if the play on the field was to start declining, as you were starting to see them be the veterans on the team. Now with Schwarber being here, that really clogs up this DH spot, and I'm not sure what the plan is going to be going forward with that. Is Schwarber just going to be DH now? I would assume so. We didn't see him play much outfield last year. So to me, that's the biggest issue with this. I love Kyle Schwarber as a leader, as a player, and as the man he is for the team. I just feel like when you look at it long-term here for the Phillies, you've had years now where this veteran core has not worked. What do you see being different? It seems like they're very in on JT Realmuto right now, so I could pretty much lock up the fact that they're going to re-sign him as well. That then leaves this outfield, and Castellanos is seemingly going to be leaving. They've pretty much openly said that. But then what? You're going to keep Brandon Marsh in the outfield. You're losing Kepler. You still haven't re-signed Harrison Bader, which I would love if you did that, bring him for about a 3-year contract. But I'm just not sure where the Phillies think this whole thing's going. You see an aging Aaron Nola, and you saw the decline he's been having. You're not sure what's going to happen with Zach Wheeler next year. It seems like he might not be coming back. Ranger Suarez is still another free agent. I just feel like there's too many question marks right now with this Phillies team to be re-signing Kyle Schwarber as a core piece going forward with this team. Again, if anybody has any differing opinions, 610-701-9243. Feel free to call in and discuss. Now, with the Kyle Schwarber signing, there were some other teams that made a push, and I was hoping one of these teams would have reached out and grabbed him. You had the Orioles. They matched the Phillies' offer, so it just seemed like when it came to that, it wasn't the money or the years at that point. It was just wanting to be in Philadelphia over the Orioles, a team that was really connected to Kyle Schwarber throughout the entire last season, and especially heading into the offseason, were the Cincinnati Reds. They offered him a 5-year, $125 million contract. I'm surprised they didn't match the Phillies, because I would assume that if they matched the Phillies, Kyle Schwarber would have chosen the Reds. He was from Ohio. He's from Ohio. He's very connected to that team and that city. They gave him the key to the city, I believe, earlier last year. So I think that if they would have matched just a few extra $1 million at that point, they would have gotten him there. And then you look at the Pirates here in Pittsburgh. They apparently have money to spend. They haven't spent money at all in the last, I'd say, decade or more. They offer him 4 years for $120 million. So obviously the lowest of the deal there. But I think that deal would have been something I would accept as the Phillies. I think a 4-year, like I said, 3-4 years, is something I would have accepted. Going that extra 5th year and adding the extra money was obviously the deal breaker there for Kyle Schwarber, so we had to up our pay just to be able to secure him there. But again, I don't think we needed Kyle Schwarber. Had over 130 RBIs last year, but how consistent can that be? One of the top home run hitters last year, still wasn't enough for an MVP. I believe he got snipped there. But going forward with this Phillies team, is Kyle Schwarber going to be able to hold up his end of the bargain and still be a valuable player to this team for years to come, or did we just throw this money at a big name to continue this long market here of the Phillies? Because the Phillies of late have kind of seemed like they're just going for the big names to keep fans in seats. And that's where I think with this Kyle Schwarber contract, they knew people loved the Schwarbomb. They loved everything that Kyle Schwarber brought. fan-wise that they just felt like they needed to re-sign him. I don't think this was for the better of the team. You have Bryce Harper, like I said, who's aging, Trey Turner aging, JT Realmuto is going to be coming back aging, this pitching staff is getting old, and I would have liked to see them turn a page to a more young crew. I think that would have been the way to go here for the Phillies. You look at what they have in the farm system, and yes, it seems like Justin Crawford is going to be coming up this season, but this is where I would have loved to see what Justin Crawford had last year. He was playing great in the minor leagues. They never wanted to bring him up. Now we're just relying on him to be this key piece in the outfield, but we don't know what he's going to bring to an MLB lineup when last year you had some room to play with how well your team was playing, how secure you were in the playoffs, that you could have brought up a Crawford, even if it was just for the postseason, saw what he had so that you would feel more confident in him. Same thing goes for Andrew Painter. If you're not going to have Zach Wheeler back this year and you're going to be relying on Aaron Nola to try and turn things around, I would have loved to see what Andrew Painter had up in the MLB before, again, just relying on him and not trading him away and thinking that he's so valuable, and maybe he's not going to be that in the MLB. We saw what he did last year in the minors. He was letting up 4 to 5 runs every single game. That's not something I think we can rely on here as Philadelphia Phillies fans, is for the Phillies to continue to put the same product out there and for us to expect anything different. Now, when it comes to the Phillies, I always refer to them as a toxic girlfriend. That is the way a lot of people I know we've always referred to them as, and it is. This team is very toxic. They're very abusive to you, and it's horrible. I mean, you sit here every year. They finally break the playoff curse. We sit here through the Aaron Altair days, the Nick Williams days, the Cameron Rupp days, and the Phillies finally make the playoffs, and it's okay, we're back. We got Bryce Harper, Aaron Nola. All these guys are going to be great. And then it's the same thing every single year, and nothing changes. Last year she brings in Max Kepler. That's the difference maker for the Phillies. Or we dropped Garrett Stubbs, and that was supposed to be a difference maker. They don't do enough to change. They do these quick little hits of things, but they don't make the long change. And that's the problem here with the Phillies, is they continue year in and year out to expect you to come back feeling the same way, and the feeling's just not the same. You don't want to see that same woman in the Phillies anymore. I said last year she came around in that pretty red dress every October, where she gives you that hope, and then the dress gets something on it, and it's not as beautiful. And now here we are in another year trying to make that dress look just as pretty, but the Phillies are still the same team down in the heart of things, and I'm just not sure what's going to change. I don't know what more they can do. Again, you're going to bring up some young talent, hope that can turn things around for you, but when you're still working with the same old core, you're not getting that new woman. It's the same woman, same problems, and you're not changing anything. So we'll see what happens. And talking about old things here, Rob Thompson, he's also now saying until 2027. So this is literally the exact same core going to be ran back for, the 4th or 5th year now. I just don't think that's something that this team can continue to do. Personally, I'm not as interested in the Phillies going into the season. Unless they pull a trigger on something, I'm not going to be able to lock into this team until they get to the Red October. Because that's the same thing we saw with the Sixers for the longest time, is yes, they can get to the playoffs, but what are they doing there? And the Phillies are just seeming like that anymore. And it's a shame, because I love being positive about the Phillies. Even when their losses in the playoffs last year, I was still putting the hype videos out. It just seems like they don't care enough to make a change. They feel so obligated to these players. And it's kind of the same situation they had there in the Charlie Manuel days, where they weren't getting rid of an aging Utley or an aging Howard in time, and they held on to that same core for too long. And it just seems like they're more concerned about getting people in the seats and keeping these familiar faces that the average fan might know. I know I've spoken to a few, I'd say, just pass by Phillies fans, some casual fans in the last few days, and especially since the Schwarber news broke, and it's like, oh, Schwarbaum's back, isn't that great? But when you dive deeper and you don't just look at the name or say, oh, he hits a lot of home runs, for the longevity of this team, is it going to be something that they can win with? I think that's the issue right now. And when I get into the Eagles, I'm going to sound a little bitter as well, and I hate sounding bitter. I hate that about Philadelphia sports media. It's always so bitter and nothing's ever enough. But with the Phillies, I've been so positive, and they come out here and they do the same exact things every single year, and it just gets frustrating as a fan. I'm sure all of you guys have the same feelings there. Now, something that they are looking to change is Don Mattingly might be coming in as the bench coach. That would be great, because we'll be seeing a lot of Schwarber on the bench, because he won't be playing the field for 5 years. But we'll see what happens with all of that. There's still some big names out there for the Phillies to grab if they want to. You have a Kyle Tucker, a Cody Bellinger, and a Pete Alonso. Now, they gave $150 to Schwarber. How much more are they willing to spend? Sounded like Dave Dombrowski wasn't too concerned about the payment of any player, just about getting them in here. But again, now that kind of takes Alonso off the shelf here, because he wouldn't be able to play first with Harper playing first. And now you have the DH spot clogged up. Can Harper go back to the outfield? I think that would change a lot of things for the Phillies. I think that would be great for the better of the Phillies going forward, since he's recovered since all of his injuries. Same with Trey Turner, though. He's played some outfield in his career. I know he's been very reluctant to go back to the outfield and to see what he can do there, but all in all, the Phillies re-signed Kyle Schwarber. I'm not a fan of it. I know there are a lot of people who are, but I think if you look at the longevity of the Phillies, I do not think this was the best move that they could have made, but that will do it for the Phillies. We'll be back on the other side of this break talking some college football, as there's a lot to talk about there as well. So stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. And welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, CJ Tully. Still lots to talk about here in the sports world. As I mentioned, the college football playoff bracket has officially been revealed, and there's been lots of controversy since the breaking of this bracket. It's actually started a few weeks prior with some of the way that teams were being ranked, and it kind of set things up. But as always, let's talk some college football. So this past weekend was championship weekend here in college football, and we had some great games at that. Starting off here with the American Conference Championship. This featured my team, my rooting interest team in Tulane. They were taking on North Texas, and headed into this game, I wasn't too sure how much of a chance Tulane would stand here, just given the fact that you did have such a great offense here in North Texas, and Drew Messermaker had been doing it all season long, over 3,000 yards in the air, but Tulane's defense was able to shut him down early in this one. There was a lot of controversy as to whether or not the refs were on Tulane's side. I think you put all that aside, Tulane Green Wave played a solid game here, almost choked it at the end, but they did not. They pick up the 34-21 win over North Texas. My guy Jake Retzlaff, 13 for 22, 145 yards through the air with 49 yards on the ground, and he finally got back to using his legs, and he got 2 touchdowns on the ground, and this is something I think is going to be really important for Tulane. Headed into the end of the season there, you weren't seeing Retzlaff run as much, and the post-game press conference I was at, he was asked about this, and he said how it's not about an injury or anything, that it was November football, and he just kind of had to put his head down and play as well as he can. So I'm glad to see that carrying over to December here, and especially in a championship game with the playoffs on the line. Jake Retzlaff showed up in a big way for them on the ground. Also on the ground, though, Jamari McClure, he is really starting to break away. Now, 121 yards in this game. He did score a touchdown as well. He was more coming into this season as a track star more so than a running back. They didn't really utilize him early. When they did, he had fumble issues. So now going into this year and this end of the season, you really start to see McClure pick it up. He's been a hard runner, and he's really been able to put his head down and get extra yards for this team. All of those 121 yards on 22 carries. So they're really relying on him here. And I think this is going to be big for them going into the playoffs, because you want to see young talent kind of break free here. Somebody that maybe other teams aren't too familiar with that can give you that extra edge, kind of like in the playoffs of baseball where you bring in a reliever that not everybody has seen. It's kind of that secret weapon. You're seeing that here with McClure for Tulane. And then in the receiving end of things, no receiver had over 40 yards. So that's a little bit of a concern. You do want to see Retzlaff air it out a little bit more, especially when you're going to be taking on a great Tulane team or a great Ole Miss team. But Ole Miss does have their defensive issues. So we'll see if Retzlaff can maybe take advantage of that. Now, this team also had 3 turnovers in this game. They had 3 interceptions, including a pick 6 by TJ Smith. He had 2 picks in the game, so you like to see that there from them, especially scoring on defense, getting those extra points without putting the offense on the field. They also had 2 fumble recoveries. So if they're able to get Ole Miss to make some mistakes, it does seem like Tulane is going to be able to get that edge, and they're going to be able to capitalize on those mistakes. So a great win there by Tulane. We will see them in the college football playoffs coming out of the American Conference. Now, another team that's going to be a bottom seed here in the college football playoffs is going to be JMU, as they pick up a 31-14 win over Troy in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. Now, this all came down to whether or not Virginia was able to win the ACC championship, which we'll get into in just a bit. But you look here at the Sun Belt, JMU played a solid game. Alonzo Barrett III, their quarterback, goes 10 for 25, 93 yards with a touchdown and an interception. On the ground, he sped his way for 85 yards with a touchdown as well. But this game all came down to Wayne Knight on the ground, 212 yards with a touchdown on 21 carries for him. He's been able to really get it going as well of late, so good to see him get it going in the championship game. Then on the other side of things, at the receiving end, you have Braden Woloski, 2 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown. So JMU is definitely going to be a sleeper team coming into this. I believe they're underdogs by 21.5 points to Oregon. Again, not sure what kind of chance JMU will have. I'll get to my breakdown of the bracket later on in the show, but JMU being able to get it done, taking care of business where they needed to set up things for them to possibly make the college football playoffs. Good for them. Their first time here making the college football playoff in the new format of things, so we'll be excited to see what happens with them. Then came the Big Ten Championship, and this game really didn't mean too much. Again, this is something I'll get to when I break down the bracket as to how I think we should fix everything that's going on with college football right now. But the Big Ten Championship featured Indiana and Ohio State. Indiana wins a very close game here, 13-10, as they were able to shut down Julian Sayin and that Ohio State offense. Fernando Mendoza, he goes 15 for 23, 222 yards with a touchdown and an interception. I believe this game and this win secures him as the Heisman. I also sprinkled a little bit on him to win Heisman, so really hoping that does pay off there. But Fernando Mendoza had himself a day. Again, you would expect it a little bit more from him, but in a big game, conference championship game against the number one team in the country, great performance there by him. Kalen Black at running back, 69 yards for him. He's kind of been splitting some shares as well at the running back position. Charlie Becker, though, receiver, big day for him, 126 yards on the day. And then Elijah Surratt, he's been doing it all year for them. He goes for a touchdown as well. So this offense is really able to get going against a great Ohio State defense. I think this will pay dividends for them going forward, as you might not face another defense quite like the Ohio State defense. So good for them. Going into the Ohio State side of things, as we do want to break down the loser in this game because they are still going to be making the college football playoffs. Julian Sayin, 21 for 29, 258 yards with a touchdown and an interception. On the ground, Bo Jackson, 17 carries for 83 yards. Him and C.J. Donaldson have really been able to split the carries here and get it done for Ohio State. The receiving end of things, a big day from Jeremiah Smith, and I've been waiting to see a game like this and for him to step up in a big-time moment, and he does it here with 144 yards. He had taken some time off. He was injuries, or in my opinion, those are just them resting him up until the college football playoffs, so he picks up 144 yards there. And then Carnell Tate, he also has a big day, 42 yards with a touchdown for them. So, again, a lot of people stepping up in big games here. We saw this out of this Ohio State receiving core. I do think this game exposed a little bit of Ohio State. I think they finally played a good team, or a great team at that, and they were kind of exposed as to this offense not being able to get going. Now, when we break down the bracket, we'll see who they have the chance to be playing next. I do think they have an easy path, not as easy as the path will be for Texas Tech coming up, but we'll see what happens with Ohio State. I still don't believe they're going to run it back-to-back. I don't think this team is the same structure. They got kind of bailed out with an easy schedule, so we'll see what happens. They did not win in the Big Ten Championship. Moving on then to the SEC Championship, where we had Georgia taking on Alabama in the most dominant game I've seen in a while. I mean, this game, Alabama was not in this game. The 28-7 does not even show the full scope. You had Georgia not able to capitalize on some easy possessions where they settled for field goals or they just punted the ball away. On the Alabama side of things, I'm surprised they even got 7 points on the board. This offense was 3-and-out after 3-and-out. It was absolutely horrible. But this Georgia offense, Gunnar Stockton, he goes 20 for 26, 153 yards with 3 touchdowns on the day. He has stepped up in a huge way. You look at just a year ago, he's filling in for Carson Beck. He didn't really have all that great of a performance in the playoffs. And then you go to this season, and he has really taken control of this team. I've loved everything I've seen with Stockton and this Georgia offense. They've been able to get rolling. On the ground, Nate Frazier, 52 yards with a touchdown. He has also been able to start to get it going, as this Georgia offense was very, very slow to start the season. Zachariah Branch, 5 receptions, 53 yards, and a touchdown. And they also get Dylan Bell involved, somebody who hasn't been as involved in this Georgia offense, for 45 yards and a touchdown as well. Now we need to talk about this Alabama team, because especially when I break down this bracket and especially the issues that I have with the college football playoffs, Alabama is not deserving of a college football spot. This team did not show up in their biggest game of the season, and they might as well have just sat all their starters because it didn't mean anything with how badly they got stomped. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I have from this game, is just how bad they did lose. If you lost by a field goal, 10 points, that happens in football. To lose by 21 points in a game that it didn't even look like 21 points. I mean, this game looked like a 45-0 game, a stomping. That's where I have the issue with Alabama not dropping. But Ty Simpson, 19 for 39, 212 yards, touchdown, and an interception. Negative 28 rushing yards with how much this man was sacked on the day. At running back, you were without Jam Miller. Now, Jam Miller has not been that great a player all season long. He's had just over 400 yards on the season. Alabama's biggest issue that I've said for weeks now, weeks on end, is that they don't have a run game. And now you see it without their number one back. Dylan Hill goes for 4 carries and 11 yards, while A.K. Bear goes for 10 yards on the day. Nobody was able to catch a ball out of the backfield. This was definitely a predicament that Alabama found themselves in with Jam Miller being out. But again, I don't know what the difference would have been with Miller in. I think all in all, this team just needs to work on establishing a run game, and they were not able to do that here with this one. Going to the wide receivers, though, you had Jeremy Bernard. He stepped up in a big way here for this team, 62 yards and a touchdown. He was kind of the only one able to get anything going here. As I mentioned, that running game was just stagnant the entire day. And I think we need to put out a missing poster here for Ryan Williams. This season, he has not had the same as last year. I mean, last year, he was one of the top receivers in college football. You look at what you were expecting coming into this season, and Ryan Williams was supposed to be the guy. He was supposed to be a Heisman contender running that Alabama offense, and he has not been that. In this game, just 2 receptions for 33 yards. Again, not sure why he's not more involved in this offense. We saw the speed he had. He was able to do it at punt returner last year as well. But just Ryan Williams in a whole, I'm expecting to see some more out of him come this playoff. They just have not targeted him on the offensive side of the ball. But as I mentioned, 28-7 win here by Georgia. It was so dominant, and I loved everything I saw with this Georgia team, except for the fact I would like to see them be a little bit more aggressive. This team kind of played it safe. They knew what they had. They were going to be in the playoffs either way. The win definitely does help them, though. It gives them a bye. But I think they could have been a little bit more aggressive, especially on plays. They did a fake punt play, went for it, and then they just kind of stopped by then. They didn't want to go for that touchdown or that field goal. They ended up punting away just a few plays later. They kind of took the foot off the pedal. But Alabama, -3 rushing yards on the day. Cannot be having that. And Georgia, they had 37 minutes of possession while Alabama was held to just 23 minutes of possession on the day. So, yes, you're not going to pick up a win with things like that occurring. Moving on, though, to the Big 12 championship and one of the most exciting games of the weekend because of how well this Texas Tech team has played. They've been so exciting all season long, and I don't think they've gotten the credit they deserve with them being in the Big 12. Texas Tech wins 34-7 over BYU. Again, a complete stomping, but it was fun to see what this Texas Tech team can do, as they are going to be another team with a bye in the playoffs. Baron Morton, 20 for 33 with 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. The only loss that they have this season is without Baron Morton. That was to Arizona State. So Baron Morton has been able to lead this team all season long. On the running back side of things, they have a dual-headed monster here with Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey. Williams goes for 80 yards, while Dickey goes for 72 with a touchdown. Again, that's so lethal. And then you move to the wide receivers. They have a list of wide receivers here who can get it done and that can damage your defense. Starting off with Reggie Virgil, 86 yards. Coy Eakin with 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that was just the extent of it. They had about 5 or 6 wide receivers who got the ball in this game. Then on the defensive side of things, 2 turnovers by Ben Roberts, and those were very big interceptions. I mean, those changed the tide of this game. And they also had 2 fumble recoveries on the day to cause 4 turnovers on this BYU team. And this BYU team is no slouch. I mean, their only loss on the season was to Texas Tech earlier in the season. Now they lose in the Big 12 championship to Texas Tech. I think this Texas Tech team needs to be looked at as a potential championship team. I personally have bet on them to win the college football championship. I think they have everything that a dominant team would need. You have the offense with so many weapons you can use. The defense knows when to get stops. I mean, you have Jacob Rodriguez, who was supposed to be up for a possible Heisman. He did not get the bid, though. And then you look at this coaching staff, and they put this team together through the NIL. And yes, I'm not a fan of buying players and everything, but if you're going to do it right. And this team has done it right, brought in all the right pieces. This coaching staff is very determined on growing men into professional players and professional men. They've said that in many interviews. So very excited to see what this team can do. I don't think they're getting all the credit they deserve. I mean, they're sitting in here as a 4 seed in the college football playoffs after not that high of a ranking to start the season. So love what I'm seeing here with this team. Again, picking up a huge win over BYU. I don't think BYU is any slouch either. They scored the first touchdown of the game. They're up 7-0, and then it just completely disappeared. L.J. Martin was only able to get so much done on the ground for them as the Texas Tech defense stepped up in a huge way. Moving over to the game of the night, that was the ACC championship. It was pretty much a win and in for Virginia. They would have won this. They'd be in the playoffs. They fall in overtime to Duke 27-20. This game had me up till midnight trying to figure out who was going to be in the college football playoffs. Duke's Darian Menza, he goes 19 for 25 for 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, showing up in the biggest game of his career. Nate Shepard, 21 carries for 97 yards and a touchdown. At wide receiver, you had Jeremiah Halsey. He goes for 19 yards but gets 2 touchdowns, a very Devontae Adams kind of stat line there for him. And Duke was able to pick up 2 interceptions. So not sure how deserving Virginia would have been had they even won that game, just given the way that Duke played and how they stepped up when they needed to. They did let up a late touchdown to Virginia to bring it to overtime, but I do like what I was seeing here out of this Duke team. But, of course, Duke with 5 losses on the season, they were not going to be making the college football playoffs as a ranked conference champion, so we do not see Duke in the playoffs, unfortunately. I do believe, though, if the ACC champion wins the ACC, you should just be slotted in as you are a Power 4 conference. But that's just not the way that things work right now. So again, those champions this weekend were Texas Tech in the Big 12, Duke in the ACC. You had Gunner Stockton and Georgia win the SEC. Big 10 was to Fernando Mendoza and Indiana. Sun Belt to JMU, and the American was to Tulane. Keep track of those, as when we get back from this break, I'll be breaking down the entire college football bracket and giving my initial takes and opinions on where college football is right now. So stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. Welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. As I mentioned before the break, we have lots more to talk about here in college football, and especially with the playoff bracket being released, lots of people unhappy with the way that things played out. So I'll just go straight through here, giving you guys the rankings, and then we'll break down my opinions on all of this. Starting off here with the 1 seed, you're going to have Indiana after their big win over Ohio State. That leaves Ohio State at number 2. Number 3 goes to SEC Championship Georgia, and then you have Texas Tech slotted in at number 4. Moving on to the first teams that are going to have home games in the playoffs, that goes to Oregon at 5. You have Ole Miss at 6, Texas A&M at 7, and then number 8 goes to Oklahoma. Now the teams that will be visiting these teams, they're going to have number 9 Alabama, number 10 Miami, number 11 Tulane, and number 12 James Madison. So all the champions making it there, except for Duke, as the ACC does not get a championship representation, but they're going to get Miami in there from the ACC. Now, the first thing that stands off here, and the biggest thing going into this whole bracket announcement was going to be, is it going to be Miami or is it going to be Notre Dame? And it seems like, obviously, it has been Miami getting the edge here, and Notre Dame has been knocked out of the playoffs after only losing the first 2 games of the season and then going on to win 10 straight games. Now, people want to say that these losses, they should have been wins for Notre Dame. They didn't play anybody else the rest of the season. But you look at it a little bit deeper. Miami lost in overtime to SMU, and they lost to Louisville, where Carson Beck had 4 interceptions. These games were both middle of the season, where Miami had their own fate at hand. They lost to 2 conference games there, and these teams were both unranked. Now you want to look at the alternative here to Notre Dame. They lose to Miami week 1 of the season with a freshman quarterback on the road. They lose that game by 3 points. Week 2, they're at home, yes. They lose on a muffed extra point where they could not get the conversion to go, and they lose by 1 point to Texas A&M, who only has 1 loss in the season, and they are currently ranked the number 7 team in college football, getting a home playoff game. So the way that the committee wanted to look at things was that losses to bad teams was going to mean more than a win over a great team or any of that kind of stuff. That seems to not be the case, as they moved BYU back after losing their conference championship, and then they moved Miami up 1 spot to put it head-to-head, Notre Dame or Miami. Now, Notre Dame was ranked over Miami the entirety of the season. There was not a single time where you saw Miami ranked higher, and especially to finish out the season, they had Notre Dame up at number 9. They then bounced them back to 10, and they moved Alabama up to 9 just 2 weeks before the college football bracket was to come out. Now, I said at the time this was going to be a way to give Alabama a buffer if they were to lose the SEC championship game, and this would then pin Miami versus Notre Dame. With the way that Alabama lost the championship game, I don't think there's any chance that Alabama deserved to be in the playoffs. Now, they played a gauntlet. I had them highly ranked the majority of the season, but their last few weeks have been horrible. This offense has not been able to get going. They barely win the Iron Bowl against Auburn, and that somehow is how they projected up to the 9 point, and they moved Notre Dame back after a dominant win to finish out their season. So I knew at the time that was going to be the buffer. That's where they're going to try and find a way to sneak Alabama in no matter what, and they were going to find a way to pin Notre Dame up against Miami. Now, yes, Miami won the head-to-head, but if that was the case, why were they never pushed above Notre Dame before it got to this point? If you look at the eye test, yes, obviously Notre Dame is the better team. Notre Dame would put on a much better competition here against any of these teams. I believe Notre Dame was a top 4 team to win the college football championship through the betting odds and everything else, with them not even being in the college football playoffs. That says a lot about the competition here. And you look at this Miami team, and they're not horrible. They have Malachi Toney. He's played well. You look at Carson Beck. He's kind of been able to get it going a little bit, I guess. But the losses that they had are horrible, and I don't think they should be rewarded for that. They are in a conference. They would have had a chance there to win the conference. But how much is that saying about Notre Dame then? And yes, people want to say Notre Dame should be in a conference, but what? They just have to squeak out a conference win to be able to make it in here? Or they can lose a conference championship by 21 points and they'd still find a way in the playoffs just because they're in a conference championship? I don't think that's necessarily the way to go about things either. I think there just has to be better stipulation when you look at what a college football playoff team is. Now you want to bump it back a little bit further. Let's look at this Tulane and JMU team. Yes, they won their conference championships, and that's great for the program and everything else, but are you really putting the best teams in college football in here? You have JMU as a 21-point underdog, and you have Tulane, I believe they're at a 17-point underdog right now, going into this college football playoff bracket and these games that they're going to be playing. Is that the competition you want to see right now? You already had Tulane lose by 35 points to Ole Miss just earlier this season, and now they're going to be taking on Ole Miss yet again. I would love to see Tulane kind of turn it around. I love Tulane. As you guys know, I interviewed the coach and player, and I think that this is a good team. But when you think about it from the standing of how things play out in professional sports, if you look at college basketball and March Madness, yes, a Cinderella team could come out of nowhere. You could have one guy get hot from the arc, and he knocks down 5 threes a game, and that puts your team in a great position to win. But you back up and look at college football. Unless some guy gets the ball and he just doesn't get tackled and he goes for 15 touchdowns, you're not going to have the same competition skill set as you would on a basketball court. And I don't think you're going to get these Cinderella runs that everybody thinks you would just by slotting in some of these teams. I don't see JMU going to beat Oregon on the road and then going to Texas Tech and they're going to put on this crazy streak. I just don't see that happening. And I think if a lot of people took emotion and things out of it, you would also see that, yeah, maybe Tulane and JMU shouldn't be in. Maybe it should have been Notre Dame and BYU getting a spot, or Notre Dame and Vanderbilt. There were some teams that really deserved these spots that would have made the playoffs a lot more fun. I'm not sure what they're going to do going forward. This was the nightmare scenario here for the committee, as you do see 2 G5 schools make it. This is obviously not the way it should have played out. They were hoping an ACC champion would have gotten in there, which is also where I think Miami could have gotten taxed. I mean, if they just won the ACC with no real competition in that conference, your biggest competition was going to be Georgia Tech, and they ended up falling apart towards the end of the season. Miami really just should have been out of luck that they didn't win their conference, was being in a conference. Notre Dame played phenomenal throughout the season, and yes, they don't really play that great competition, but the majority of the teams they play are coming out of the ACC. So what does that say again about Miami? If they're not able to even win that conference, Notre Dame could just slot themselves in that conference, they would have won the conference. So lots of question marks going on here. A lot of people just hate Notre Dame just to hate Notre Dame. If you're one of those people or you love Notre Dame, call in here at 610-701-9243. But I think this college football bracket would have been a lot more exciting had you had more competition in it. How many people are tuning into Ole Miss taking on Tulane, or Oregon taking on James Madison? I mean, those are games where they're going to be stompings, and that's whether or not the team wants to put on the full stomping. Like I saw with Georgia and Alabama, did Georgia really put in all of the effort they could have to really stomp that team? I don't believe they did. But going back here to Alabama, because I think this is where things really got out of shape. Alabama should have not been in this whole championship run here because of how bad that loss was. Now, what precedent does this set up going into conference championship weekend for years to come? If a team is already ranked and they're just going to make it in no matter what, what's the point of playing this game? Yes, Georgia got a bye, but how important is that when you really want to think about it? Because Ohio State won last year without the first round bye. They had to play Texas in the first round. They then dominated Oregon, and they marched their way up to a conference or to a championship run there. So, yes, the bye is great, but if you can rest your players and the conference championship really means nothing. I mean, Alabama didn't have to start a single starter, and they would have lost that game by the same amount of points likely, and they still would have been in the college football playoffs just because of where they were slotted. They didn't even get bumped back to number 10, and they moved Miami up to 9. There's just something wrong with the way that this all played out. And again, BYU is another team that has every right to be frustrated here. You look at BYU, the only loss they had this season was to Texas Tech, who was slotted in here as the number 4 team. They then go and play Texas Tech in the conference championship. They lose that one again, so they lost to Texas Tech twice, and now they're bumped out of complete contention. So that conference championship game in the Big 12 meant so much to BYU, but the same game in the SEC meant nothing to Alabama. Again, I get the competition is different in the SEC as it is to the Big 12, but how are we going to look at these conference championships in the future and feel like they mean anything to any of these SEC or the Big 10 schools if there's really no weight to it? It really just comes down to who they are, how many teams they want to slot in from each conference, and then we see teams like Notre Dame taking the hit just because they're not in a conference, and all of that comes back to tradition. So that's for the better of the sport, in my opinion. They go to the ACC, they're just going to win the ACC every single year. So we'll see what happens with all of that. Again, I don't believe Alabama deserved it. I think this was bad for the sport that 2 G5 teams are in it. And again, I think they're going to have to sit at the table and restructure how they feel like these college football playoffs are going to be going forward. Because you saw them readjust from last year's 12-team playoff that they introduced into this year. There were some different standards. And now next year, I think they're going to have to sit at the table and figure this out yet again. And I think that this is something that will be a problem going forward. Now, the last thing I want to get to here on this same conversation is the fact of seeding. Because I said this for weeks now, actually since the beginning of the year, I don't think college football seeding should mean as much, especially early in the season. the preseason rankings have screwed over a lot of teams. If you look at a team like Texas Tech, like BYU, maybe a Vanderbilt, these teams were so low ranked that it took them forever to even get into a top 15 kind of standing, because you look at the way that these teams go, and you had it a Texas ranked high, you had Ohio State ranked high, you had Penn State ranked high, Clemson was ranked high, and these teams ended up falling apart. They ended up getting bounced out of the top 25 early in the season. But then you look at a team like a BYU, like a Texas Tech, who had to march their way up to a top 15 ranking. That's not how it should be. It should be based on how you play football, not a preseason assumption made by a bunch of people. You should be looking at the way that college football is played. So start these rankings in week 4, week 5, after you've seen what these teams can put up, who they can compete with, rather than just, I don't think BYU is going to be great this year, so we're going to slot them all the way back here. If they want to have a top 10 ranking, they're going to have to really dominate everybody just to get up here with some of these big dogs who might not be playing the same competition. If you look at an Ohio State, yes, they beat Texas early, but should they really have been the number 1 ranked team all season long? I mean, they didn't beat some of the teams that even a Georgia or an Alabama were able to beat this year. So I just don't think that that's how ranking should be done. It shouldn't be based on a preseason ranking, based on everybody's assumption as to what a team would be. It gives these teams that are further back a very hard time to try and march their way back into this, and it gives a buffer to some of these teams that might not be playing all that great this season. But, before the season, I thought they'd be great, so they get to stay slotted up here early. You can look at the same thing with Notre Dame. I'll play devil's advocate. They were ranked in the top 10 to start the season. They lost back-to-back games, and they were still in the top 25. How are you a top 25 team after you lose back-to-back games? I'm just not sure how this all plays out. I don't think that the rankings mean anything anymore, especially when you look here at how the playoffs go and the college football playoff format of everything. It doesn't really matter because they're just going to pick and choose who they want to slot in at the end anyway. There was no reason for Notre Dame to get bounced back, for Miami to get moved up, or even for Alabama to move up over Notre Dame just 2 weeks ago. So I think that we can do away with the college football rankings, and that might be better for the sport. But that's everything I have on college football. If you want more on college football, you can follow me at LRBuzz_pod on Instagram and TikTok. And then over on my website, that's www.letstalksports.com. That's LetsTAWKsports.com. That website is everything college football. You get news, my podcasts, all of my social media right from there. And if any employers are listening, my LinkedIn is on there as well. We can check out all of that. But again, that's LetsTAWKsports.com. You can check that out. When we come back from this quick break, I'll be giving you guys everything on the NFL. And a quick shout out to Ramers and any of the ladies listening there. I've been working with you guys of late. So shout out to the chocolate ladies there. I'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, CJ Tully. As always, that song just gives it a little boost to finish out the show here. One last segment here. We're going to talk some college football, or some NFL. We just talked a lot of college football. Getting into the NFL, though, I want to start with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I hate sounding bitter. I don't like to sound like I don't like the teams or like everything is negative because I feel like there's too much of that in Philadelphia sports media. But when you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, there's not too much to really gravitate towards right now. And I think that's the problem that the city's been having with the team is we expect so much. Jeffrey Lurie comes out, Nick Sirianni come out, and everybody's saying it's going to be a winning culture. We're going to continue to win this and that. And then you come out and you look at the product on the field, and it's just not exciting. There's nothing to get me going for a Sunday morning besides from church. But you look at the Sunday with the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's not that exciting. This team has just not seemed coherent or congruent on this team whatsoever. You look at what they've been doing. They have a few losses now on the season. It's just this team hasn't put it together, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and it's just not been exciting. As an Eagles fan, as a huge Eagles fan a few years ago, this team just hasn't been able to lock me in of late. And it's kind of the situation I'm seeing with the Phillies here. It's just there's not that juice from the team to make me want to watch or to make me want to sit down and take time out of my night to watch. For work, though, I did have to watch this one. I had to stay up till midnight. So bad on that. But the Eagles now 3 straight losses to the Cowboys, the Bears, and the Chargers. And this game, you could blame so many different people, but I don't think the coaches take the blame in this game. You look at Sirianni and Kevin Patullo, and they had a great structure for how this game was going to play out. It just did not play out that way on the field. Jalen Hurts, 4 turnovers in the game. This was definitely his worst game of his career. He was just not able to figure anything out at this point. 4 interceptions, including a fumble. The fumble coming on that really weird interception that it was all over the place. That was weird. But the Chargers win 22-19 over the Eagles. That game was in overtime. I thought the best case in that game was the Eagles to tie, especially late in that overtime period. It looked like they were going for the win, which I liked the aggression. but that pass was just not there for Jalen Hurts, as he does throw the game-winning pick there for the Chargers. Eagles now 8-5 on the season. The season has just not been the way that the Eagles would have thought. And if the Cowboys would have had an earlier great start to their season, the Eagles would be impossible. No playoff contention here. But the fact that the Cowboys are always the Cowboys helps the Eagles here. And the Commanders only 3 wins on the season. Everything has kind of played out in favor here of the Eagles to win this division, even though they have not played any great football thus far. There are some things to be taken away, though, as you did see Jalen Hurts throws for 240. Not the greatest, but Saquon Barkley on the ground, 122 yards on 20 carries with a touchdown. We finally were able to find Saquon Barkley find a hole, and that's something we haven't seen in a while.
That's what she said.
But other than Saquon Barkley, we also saw A.J. Brown get involved in this one. Another 100-yard game for him on 6 receptions. And going back to A.J. Brown, this is something I said last week, is now that he's getting the ball, now that he's getting his yardage, you're not seeing him complain as much, but the team's losing. This is where I feel like players need to step up and complain, or step up with solutions, not when they're not just getting the ball and they're not the storyline of every week. But when the team's losing, that's when you need to step up, take accountability, and say, hey, this is how we're going to change things. Not just all complacent now that you're getting 100 yards a game, because that's not the way that the Eagles are winning, clearly. They're stepping away from whatever was working to feed you the ball, and now they have 3 straight losses. So not sure what's going to happen there. Again, A.J. Brown seemingly just dropping a lot of balls in this game as well. The one leading to an interception. You had the early one in the game. The first play of the game, they had a chance to go deep to A.J., just dropped it. So lots of that going on right now as well. We've seen this with A.J. Brown before. He was giving up on routes. So I'm just not sure what's going on with this team right now. Lots to talk about possibly Jalen Hurts getting benched. I'm always a Hurts apologist, I guess. I don't think that's the way to go, though. I don't think that would solve anything for this team. You still need your leader. Nick Sirianni came out today early in the morning and had a statement saying that there's no way that Hurts is being benched, no matter what's going on this season, unless of an injury, of course. But Tanner McKee is who everybody thinks can turn around this season and fix the Eagles for good. I just don't see that being the case. Yes, Tanner McKee played great in the preseason, but you look at the divas on this team and everything that goes around with the Eagles. Can Tanner McKee really step up and be that guy for this team? Jalen Hurts might not be the greatest leader to everybody's eye, but I would hope that behind the scenes he's able to step up and have some kind of discussion with these players. I still think Hurts has enough in him. It's just him getting comfortable in everything that's going on around him. This is not a great situation for anybody. I don't see Hurts ever leaving the Eagles. I don't see him taking off anywhere else. I just think that something needs to change with the culture of this team, whether that is shipping out an A.J. Brown or adjusting something. There needs to be a culture change in this locker room. They tried the giant inflatable bunny, and that did absolutely nothing. I don't know what the whole plan with that was. That was kind of embarrassing, honestly. You had Bamboo Brad. That was a thing for a while, and that kind of worked for the Phillies. But the bunny was just, we're just a laughingstock of the league right now, and everybody's preying on our downfall. So we bring in Peter Rabbit, and that's supposed to change everything. Not sure what that was all about, but this Eagles team has the capability to be a great team. We've seen that week in and week out. This defense is phenomenal. They are flying all over the place. Nakobe Dean has been an unsung hero of this team. He's constantly finding the quarterback pressures. Cooper DeJean is always around the ball. Quinyon Mitchell, you have Jalen Carter was out in this one. Jordan Davis. You have so many guys on this defense that when they're playing at their best, this defense is one of the best defenses I have ever seen work. And I think they still have the chance to make the defense the centerpiece of this team. All you need to do is get back to what worked last year, and that's Saquon Barkley being able to find the holes.
That's what she said.
And we just haven't been able to see that. And I think this is the key situation that the Eagles didn't want to find themselves in, was everything that worked for them last year being able to be their kryptonite this year. The tush push hasn't been used as much, and I don't know if that's because of public criticism to where you see Nick Sirianni say, maybe we don't use that all the time. The one big run by Saquon was a knockoff tush push where you just threw it out instead. I like the creativity there. I don't know why we don't see that more often. You know the entire line is going to be collapsing forward, so you have everything on the outside. So I don't know why that's never utilized more. And even if you do then use that a little bit more, then maybe the defensive line isn't so quick to jump in. Maybe they are a little bit more hesitant to see if you do a fake off of the play. So just there's certain things that I think this team can utilize better that they just haven't of late. But I do think the Eagles still have a chance at this. I'm not giving up completely. There just has to be some kind of change. And I do think by the end of the season, A.J. Brown will not be on this team next year. I do believe that's a big part of the culture issues right now with the Eagles, is too many eyes drawn to the wrong things. And you look at Jalen Hurts, and I think he's a great leader of men, but I don't know if he's doing it in the right way. I don't know if it's really clicking with this team. Even just looking at the offensive line as a whole, they seem like they have something going. You look at the defense. That seems like a young, fun group. They have great camaraderie. Then you look at, I don't see Hurts, Saquon, Brown, and Smith ever sitting in the same room having a good time playing poker or having a drink. They don't seem like those kind of close guys, and I think that's an issue with this team. You can look at other points of this team and say, yeah, those are close guys. I mean, Reed and Coop, they have a podcast together. You look at Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, they have the Christmas thing going on with Jason Kelsey. This offense of Hurts, Saquon, Smith, and Brown, I don't see them ever getting around having a good laugh or anything. This team seems very standoffish. They seem very stuck in their own ways, and that's not the way to organize a team right now. I mean, look over at the Colts. That's a team that they brought in Daniel Jones, and he brought a culture with him. They changed the camaraderie around that team, and this offense needs something like that. They need a jolt of something to come in here and fix this team, but we'll move on from the Eagles, and we'll actually stick here on the Colts, as I just mentioned. They are now on a big losing streak as well. They just lost 36-19 to the Jags. Daniel Jones is now out for the season after a bad injury on that leg there of his, a torn ACL. He has 3,100 yards on the season, 19 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Like I said, he completely changed the culture of this team and everything in this locker room, and that's the kind of spark a lot of teams need. And you've really been able to see it from some of these journeymen, as they've gotten all the bash and they've been hated on and everything else. They come into these new environments and they change everything. See it with Baker Mayfield. You've seen it with Bryce Young. I mean, or not Bryce Young, he stayed with the same team, but you know what I mean. There's different teams that take on these players. Sam Darnold, that's what I was thinking. And they changed the culture there. So Daniel Jones out for the season. Hope a speedy recovery for him. He can get back and stay here with the Colts. They did start 8-3 on the season, and then they have 3 straight losses since then to bring them to 8-6. And Jonathan Taylor is the one piece in this that changes everything. And this is the one thing I've said for weeks now, is when Jonathan Taylor's going, this team is going. But when he does not have a great game, this team falls apart. Just 74 yards in this game with a touchdown. On the season, 753 yards with 5 touchdowns, or a lot more than that. But the thing is, if Jonathan Taylor is not going, this team is not going, and we need to see something change with that. So who comes in and steps in here for the Colts? It's going to be Riley Leonard, unless his injury is going to keep him out as well. He went 18 for 29 in his little run there with the Colts last game, 154 yards with a touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown as well. Colts are also bringing in Phillip Rivers, the grandfather, to come in here and see if he can make a difference. At his age, he's not played in 5 years. He's actually a quarterfinalist right now for the Hall of Fame, which would then set him back if he does come back and play another 5 years. But see what happens here with the Colts. Everything is kind of falling apart here for them, and there isn't much to really gravitate towards in a positive light for the Colts. Moving on, though, to a team that I believe is going to win the Super Bowl, and I want to say this right now. The Seattle Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl. They're currently sitting 10-3 after a 37-9 win over the Falcons. And this team, I'll say it again, is winning the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold, 20 for 30, 249 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception against the Falcons. On the ground, again, we're still a little weary there. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. They've been splitting some carries. Not too secure there on the ground game, but Jackson Smith and Jigba, 7 receptions, 92 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Rashid Shaheed, 4 receptions, 67 yards, and Cooper Kupp, 2 receptions, 35 yards, and a touchdown. This team has enough to win a Super Bowl. On defense, 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery in this one. On the season, this defense has 15 interceptions and 6 fumble recoveries. That is championship football. You look at the home field advantage they'd have as well. That place is going to be electric. This team is back to the days of great play. You had Russell Wilson cooking there, Marshawn Lynch. This team is giving me those kind of vibes, that defense of Brandon Maxwell and all those guys. This is that team right now. Their loss of the season to the Niners was week 1, 17-13. They lost to the Bucks 38-35, and the Rams 21-19, and that was a game where Sam Darnold had 4 interceptions. This team is going to find ways to win down the stretch, and if they win the West, especially in the most difficult division right now in college or in football, this team is going to win a Super Bowl, and I see it happening. Sam Darnold is going to get over that hump. He had a great year last year with the Vikings. They gave up on him. Going to Seattle, he is going to win a Super Bowl this season. Next team I want to talk about here before we get out is the Steelers. Are they starting to find their way? You look here, they have a 27-22 win over the Ravens. This is the most electric I've seen Aaron Rodgers in a long time. He was doing his discount double check again. The team was really starting to pick up some energy. The defense, though, is what scares me with this team. They were supposed to be one of the best defenses in football, and they just haven't had that. Jalen Ramsey was supposed to be the edge. He was starting to give you that a little bit. You had the whole situation there with Jamar Chase. But if this defense gets going, if TJ Watt can find the quarterback, this team will get going, and I think they can still win the North. They're the number 1 team right now. You do have the Ravens lurking. The Bengals I wish the Bengals were great. It just seems like they can't get over that hump. Joe Burrow's injuries are always putting a little dent in that. You have the talent to do it. It's just when will everything line up for you to do so? But the Steelers, on the other hand, Aaron Rodgers, like I said, playing the most fun football I've seen him play in a while. 23 for 34, 284 yards with a touchdown on the day against the Ravens this season. 2,300 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. With this being his last year in the NFL, you got to think he's going to put everything into this, get in the playoffs, and see what happens. Mike Tomlin's name has been out there as possibly being fired or going down to college football. So still lots of speculation as to what's going to happen with this team. But I do like what I'm seeing. I think this team has a chance. Again, it's just the right pieces falling in at the right times. Can Aaron Rodgers continue to play great football? Can this defense step up and get a few stops each and every game to put them over an edge? We will see about that. DK Metcalf coming in here from the Seahawks, 7 receptions, 148 yards this week. And on the season, 753 yards with 5 touchdowns. So, again, this team has the talent to do something. Can they do it? Kenneth Gainwell, another unsung hero for this team coming over from the Eagles. All needed him to get 7 yards in the Super Bowl, and he did. He's got talent as well. Jalen Warren at the running back position. They have talent. It's just can they get it done? We'll see what they can do to finish out the season, but I do think that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be Super Bowl contenders. I do think the Steelers are going to turn things around, and I do think the Colts are cooked because you look at the way that the Texans have played, and they are coming for that AFC South. The Jaguars are also playing great football right now. Just so much going on right now. And then you look at the Chiefs, 6-7 right now in the season. It looks like they might be out for the count, picking up a bad loss to the Texans, 20-10 on Sunday Night Football. Travis Kelce with some costly drops. They have just not been the same team whatsoever. This might be the decline and the eventual fall off of this team. Was Taylor Swift the one that did it? We'll see what happens. I do think Travis Kelce might retire after this year. You know, he's settling down with Tay-Tay. I don't know how much longer he's going to want to play football. This team's starting to decline. Do you really want to be a part of that? So we'll see what happens with all of that. C.J. Stroud on that game, though, 203 yards with a touchdown. They've been able to tread water long enough that they now can jump the Colts. They do have a chance at this division. So Davis Mills was able to do for the Texans. This team does have a real shot here, and I would not give up just yet. Nico Collins, he's starting to get it going as well with 121 yards on just 4 receptions against the Chiefs. Some other teams keep an eye out here. The Broncos still 11-2 now on the season, picking up a 24-17 win over the Raiders. The Eagles will take on the Raiders next week. That should be a game the Eagles win pretty easily. If the Eagles lose to the Raiders, I'm going to start to have some real questions here as to whether or not this Eagles team can compete for anything. I didn't think there was a chance they lose to the Chargers. And now if they lose to the Raiders, we're going to have some serious questions to be talking about here next week. And we also might be having a guest join us next week, so stay tuned for that. That will be next Wednesday, 11-12. And then we'll be having a show on Christmas Eve, so you could spend your time here Christmas Eve with me. It might not be all sports. We might be doing some holiday stuff as well to really shake it up for it being the Christmas holiday on Christmas Eve. So you can check that out as well. But that will do it for this episode here of Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, CJ Tully. You can check me out on social media on TikTok and Instagram at LRBuzz_pod. You can also find all of that on my website at letstalksports.com. That's TAWKsports.com. There's a college football podcast there that's on YouTube and Spotify. That is just Let's Talk Sports. That's Let's TAWK Sports. So lots going on with that. I'm going to be bringing a lot more content in the new year as well. Some more merchandise, lots coming out. So stay tuned for all of that. Thanks to all of you guys that make any of this possible. You can always check me out here 11-12 on 95.3 WCHE. Again, I'll catch you guys next time. Stay tuned.